Hi, this is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is listening beyond the soundbites. Joining me in studio today is a very good friend, longtime friend, Steve Howard, who's the executive director of the VSEA. Everybody on the other, what? Your best friends? What's this about?
That scares people.
Exactly. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, it's been a while. You've been on before, but quite a while ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, I couldn't find my notes before, but I thought, well, if there's one place I know about, I could just wing the questions, is the VSEA.
Yeah.
So why don't you do, for those of you who don't know who Mr. Howard is, you could introduce yourself a little bit and how long you've been at the VSEA.
Sure. Well, I've been at the VSEA for a little over 12 years.
Wow.
Which is really amazing. I started as the legislative director and was there for about a year, and then I became the executive director. So I've done that for last little over 12 years of my life.
Good for you. And before that, before the trucks, which we have to talk about, that just kills me. You were in the legislature.
I was in the legislature for 12 years from Rutland.
Yeah.
And then I worked as a victim advocate in the state's attorney's office in Chittenden County for T.J. Donovan.
Yeah.
And then while I was in the legislature, when the legislature wasn't in session, I worked as an organizer for various groups throughout New England. I would organize tenants and organize political campaigns, and I would raise money mostly for women running for office.
Nice.
Not exclusively women, but my clients just tended to be women who were running for office. So I had a lot of interesting.
And what was the truck thing?
So the truck was the Coalition Against Bigger Trucks. Oh, right. This is when you were Secretary of Transportation.
Yes. I was in motor vehicles. I'm sitting at my desk, and there's a letter from Steve Howard.
There we go.
Just about died.
Yeah.
I said, what the hell? You're not a truck guy. I don't think. Maybe you are. But
I became one.
yeah, you did. That's cool.
It was a campaign, a national campaign. This is how Washington works. It's so funny. That was spearheaded by the Teamsters and the rail lines and the coalition of the National Troopers Coalition and a bunch of environmental groups, and it was fighting an effort by Walmart to allow triple trailer trucks.
Oh.
Because they wanted to, on long trips where they're moving cargo.
Right.
The only efficient way to do that is on the rail.
Yep.
They wanted to pit the rail and the trucks against each other, and so they could lower the costs. And so they were creating truck trains.
Yes. Oh, I've seen pictures of them out west.
Yeah.
But you can't back those little things up.
No, and what's really interesting is the video of them swinging in the wind.
Yeah.
The back trailers swing, and sometimes the driver can't tell. So you'd be driving along, and all of a sudden the trailer would swing. And we met a lot of people who were in accidents with the trailer that swung over into their lane, and the truck driver didn't know what was happening.
Yeah, but out west it looks like it makes sense because it's open road, and but around here that would be ridiculous.
It was funny how I got that job too. I was hired because Senator Jeffords was the chair of the Environment and Public Works Committee, and they called me and said, and we want to talk with you about this, and they interviewed me, and they said, well, how would you approach, lobbying Senator Jeffords? And I said, well, I'd start by calling his wife, Liz. She lives in Shrewsbury. Then I would call his neighbors. Then I'd go to the high school and look at his yearbook and see who graduated in his class, and I would get people to contact him who he would call back. And we did that, and we had about 6 or 7 organizers across the country.
Nice.
We beat Walmart. We beat the trucking lobby that had 88 lobbyists on Capitol Hill. And we had these 6 little scrappy organizers who focused on high quality contacts. So if the person I wanted to call Senator Jeffords' office is somebody I knew he would call back.
Yeah.
So I also went up and down the streets in Shrewsbury where he lived, and I got lawn signs, no triple trailer trucks, and I put them all the way up. I had his neighbors agree to put them on their lawns. So when he came back from Washington, he drove up a street with all these signs. So there is a way to beat the lobbyists in Washington. You just have to be really smart about it.
When you're talking about triple trailer, I'd say no.
Yeah.
I mean, you just do.
Yeah.
I think you have to be in the industry to understand that because what are they, 28 foot trailers, each of them, or are they
God,
little
I don't remember
bigger?
anymore.
Because I think there's
Yeah.
328s.
Yeah, it was a great job. I flew all over the country.
Oh, neat.
And I did Vermont, and then they dropped me, and I had New England, and then they would drop me into different congressional districts all over the country. So I
Cool.
got to see, you were 2 weeks out in the districts, and then 2 weeks on Capitol Hill, and
What
so you
fun.
would figure out how to, you would figure out the lay of the land in different congressional districts.
Cool.
You know, it was kind of interesting, but.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then back home to Vermont.
And I came home. Yeah, I got
Yeah,
sick.
there you go.
I remember I was sitting in LaGuardia in the winter, and my flight kept getting canceled.
Oh.
And I finally said, I am sick of airports,
Right.
and I'm not doing this anymore.
Well, to tell you the truth, I wouldn't be flying too much these days till,
Yeah.
till they get their act together.
Not out of LaGuardia.
Yeah, no, oh my God. Well, I think Newark is not too good either, is it?
Yeah.
Or is it
Newark
just-
is the problem area, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
forget that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you've got the VSEA. How many employees are there? Do you represent? Because it's not
Mm-hmm.
just the VSEA. You have some people from the colleges.
Yeah, yeah.
So go through that.
We have
Wonderful.
9 bargaining units.
Whoa.
Yeah, we have just shy of 6,100 members.
Oh, Steve,
Yeah.
that's a lot of
It's
people.
a big family.
Yes.
A big diverse family, and it's mostly like if you've ever been, when you go to Thanksgiving with your family, that's what the VSEA can be like.
Okay.
People all have different views and different perspectives, and they
Right.
do different work, but you still pass the turkey and the mashed potatoes
yeah.
without throwing them at each other usually.
You better. That's a lot of voices behind you.
Yeah, there's quite
That's
a few.
pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, yeah, we have really great members who stay informed and who get involved. If we call them, and say, hey, there's this issue, we need you to reach out to your legislator or reach out to the governor, they do it.
That's great.
So we're really, that's sort of the source of our power.
Yeah.
We have great staff, great lobbyists, but the source of our power is that a big chunk of those 6,100 members will stop their legislator and talk to
great.
them, and will call them and say, hey, we hope you'll vote with the VSEA on this bill.
Now, years ago, there used to be a push from I don't know whether it's the AFL-CIO or whatever, to come in and it is unionized, but to bring in outside entities like AFL-CIO to take over the VSEA. But I haven't heard, I'm glad,
Yeah.
I think it's so much better to have a local
You need
union.
a Vermont-based union that
Yeah.
specializes in Vermont.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had those out-of-state unions that don't understand the process here. They don't really understand the labor board here. They don't understand how the legislature works here.
Don't come here.
Yeah, and they really, it's hard for an out-of-state union to do the same work that we do.
Right.
Especially since we've been doing it for so long.
Yeah,
So,
and you certainly know all the legislators, and I know they have a lot of
a
respect.
lot of new ones this
Yeah,
year, right?
oh my gosh, this
Yeah.
year is amazing to me.
Yeah.
To me, but they know you, and you have a good reputation up there.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I hope so.
No, I watch you in the cafeteria, and hi, how are you? How are
Yeah.
you? That's a good thing.
It's funny that over the years I've worked in the Vermont State House off and on for the past 30 years, and the faces change, but the characters are the same. So you see, Bobby Starr's no longer there, but now there's a new dairy farmer who reminds you an awful lot about Bobby
really?
Starr.
There you go.
And you could picture who was this person 30 years ago?
Yeah.
It's the same mix of people, just different people.
And each one of them you could write a book about, especially Bobby.
yeah.
Oh my
Bobby,
God, the
God.
stories you could tell about that man, funny as all
There
get
should
up.
be a movie about that. He's,
When he puts on the accent and doesn't.
Oh, yeah.
When he lays it on real
yeah,
thick.
he's
it's like,
funny.
oh my God. He told a story, I won't go into it because I don't want to waste time, about being arrested.
Uh-huh.
Honest to God, you would have hoped he'd get arrested every other day so we could tell a
Tell the
similar
story.
It was so funny.
Yeah.
I'm sure even the police were laughing. So let's talk about your job as executive director. You arrange for the contract negotiations. Do you have 9? You have 9 entities that you have contracts with?
We have nine contracts.
Wow.
We have a team. We have a great director of labor relations, Gary Hoadley. He's been
Gary's
there for
still
30
there. I
years.
love it.
Yeah.
Say hello. Hi, Gary.
Yeah, he's a master at this.
Yeah.
Gretchen Naylor has been there 20 years.
Nice.
We have really good and experienced field representatives that also participate. But the heart and soul of the bargaining process are the members who volunteer to be on or who are elected to be on the bargaining team by their colleagues, and they meet, they sit around the table and decide what they want to propose, and they respond to what the state is proposing, and then there's a process of give and take.
How do you manage to get focus on all 9 of them? They don't overlap or anything, do they? Or
the 3 big ones, the executive branch ones, those negotiations all take place at the same time. And, on healthcare and on wages and on some of the big issues, they're pretty much the same in the 3
Are they all
units.
in the same room with you, the 3, or separate rooms?
Sometimes they're together, sometimes they're separate.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it depends on what they decide to do. And then the smaller units are sometimes they're on the same schedule as the big one, as the big 3, and sometimes they have different schedules.
Yep.
The housing authority, for instance, we're not going to have a negotiation with them until next year. So it spaces itself out a little bit.
That's
but
great.
It is a lot of work. It's a ton of work.
Really?
But.
And who has the state been using as their attorney over these?
So it's McNeil Leddy. It's Joe McNeil.
Oh, Joe McNeil.
Yeah.
He's still there. I love it.
Joe and Gary can finish each other's sentences.
I'm sure they can. They've been doing it long enough.
Yeah, they know what's coming.
Both of those gentlemen are very good.
Yeah, they're very good,
excellent.
very good, and it's funny to watch. John Berard, who's the director of labor relations for the state.
Yep.
He and Gary are like a married couple who desperately need counseling.
That is funny.
We watch them fight, and I think, God, this reminds me of dinner at my house when I was a kid.
Calm down, calm down. Well, at least they're passionate.
Yes,
and they
do.
are. Gary is passionate. I know
yeah.
that. He came into my office one time. He's screaming at me about something, and he stopped. He said, "You don't write these letters, do you?" I went, "Nope." He goes, "Bye." I just signed them, But somebody, and he says, "Who writes them?" And I told him, probably Tom Ball.
Yeah.
And then he goes over to yell at Tom.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah. So you've got the Defender General, you've got sheriffs, and what is that?
We have the transport deputies, state transport deputies.
Oh, who's that?
So those are deputy sheriffs who are state employees, basically. And they do all the transports for corrections, for DCF, for the Department of Mental Health.
Interesting. Where do they operate out of, and who's their boss? Is it a separate?
They work
service?
the Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs with the world famous Annie Noonan.
Annie Noonan. Yes.
And now Tim Lueders Dumont, who's the new executive director. So that's the department that's who we negotiate with.
Yep. Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Cool.
so we negotiate with Annie.
Yes, I just saw Annie over breakfast the other day, so it's good to see her. All right, so you got the state colleges, but not teachers, right? Do you have
the only teachers we have teachers in the correctional system? So the Community High School of Vermont, which is the largest high school in Vermont, and we have the teachers that work in that high school.
Good.
They are, so that if you're incarcerated and you're under 21 and you don't have a high school diploma, you're required to go to school, just like you would in there.
Oh, good for you guys. That's great.
Yeah, so the teachers teach those classes, and then other offenders who want to get their GED or who just want to learn, they can also take those classes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that about mandatory. I think that's great. I don't know if they think it's great, but it will be when they get out.
I think some do, some don't. It's like any high school, I wasn't the best student. I don't learn well in a classroom, so I probably wouldn't be that excited about it. But
I would always tell my grandchildren, the more you learn, the more choices you have.
yeah,
That's it. So
the more power you have.
you have more power. There you go.
Yeah.
So if you want to be able to
Yeah.
pick,
Yeah,
you better
right.
learn. So there you go. So and how? One of the things I was thinking about at home is how with 9. How do you may not be the one to do, but how do you get the what do you need part from 6,100? How do you get that?
We send out surveys. We have an organizing department. We have 4 organizers, and they work with our communications department, and they send out surveys. In fact, I just saw one go out today.
Great.
So members can fill out a questionnaire about what their top priorities are.
Nice.
Yeah, ultimately it's up to the bargaining team to decide what proposals will go forward. But they do consult the membership to see what their priorities are.
That's great. And us exempts want to thank you as well.
Yeah.
Because we're exempt from everything, I guess.
Yeah.
But we take advantage of what you bargained
Yeah,
for.
yeah.
So,
I get often with our healthcare plan, when we were in that big pension fight, commissioners would stop me in the hallway and say, please protect our pension.
oh, yes, for sure.
And I would say, don't tell anybody I said that, but
Yeah,
please
well,
protect our pension.
And then you and I were talking about our medical benefits when they were talking about Medicare.
Oh,
What
Medicare
was
disadvantage.
that?
Yeah, and you see like U.S. Health is going under and all these plans. It hasn't saved a dime. It's cost us, the taxpayers, a lot of money. And it's, they sell these scam things where they say, we'll give you a gym membership and you'll get rides to the doctor's office, but they don't tell you that you're coming out of Medicare and going into a private plan. And so if you're a state employee, if you leave the state employee's plan, you can't come back.
Right.
So that was a very bad idea.
Yeah.
And luckily the legislature saw
Thank you.
the virtue in
all I
opposing
thought
it.
about first year when we're handing them 6,100 people, they're going to do whatever
Yeah.
we want to get us. The next time we show up
Yeah.
with no union behind us, they
Yeah.
tell us to pound sand and
Right.
take it or leave it, right?
Yeah, they make a lot of promises. We were the first state in the country to stop a proposal by the executive branch from imposing Medicare Advantage.
Thank you.
Yeah, the first time it happened here, and then New York, and I think Delaware and other states started to
Because
follow.
the way it is right now for us retirees, I light candles every day.
Yeah.
When I get that bill in January and June, I go, thank you.
Yeah, it's a
Seriously,
big thing.
I don't know what I
Yeah.
would do by myself listening to what my friends pay.
Yeah,
It's ridiculous.
We passed this year. We worked really hard to pass 3 big bills. One bill, H-266, the projection is it could save up to $11 million for
Oh.
the state employees' healthcare plan. We worked really hard on reference-based pricing, which in future years is going to
Yes.
save all Vermonters money in the healthcare plan. The healthcare system is in real crisis in Vermont, and the cost of healthcare is too high. One hospital in particular is charging a lot more than other hospitals. In fact, in that bill, H-266, there was testimony about a particular infusion that you have to receive.
Right.
And if you went to this large hospital in Burlington, maybe people
Should we
know.
name
Should we just say
this
it's
one?
UVM? You go to UVM. So you go to Rutland, it's $1,700 for this procedure. You go to UVM, it's $95,000.
Sorry.
$95,000.
Shouldn't be laughing. So that's ridiculous.
It's really crazy.
Do you know that the president signed a couple of years ago? It was in Trump in his first term.
Mm-hmm.
But he signed a bill that said we should be able to go to each hospital and find out knee replacement costs $10,000. It costs.
Yeah.
Well, Campaign for Vermont went and solicited that
Yeah.
information. You can't find out.
crazy.
The only hospital that had
Yeah.
knee replacement was
Copley.
Copley. Yes,
Yeah.
they had it exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's now, I think, on the website. I think it was on the website for the Department of Financial Regulation.
Yeah.
But in fact, there was a proposal which VSEA supported. It didn't make it into the final budget that would have incentivized state employees to shop around. So if you wanted your knee replacement
Right.
done, you would, let's say Copley was a lot cheaper
Yep.
than Rutland, and you went to Copley, you would get half the savings.
Wow.
It didn't make it, but we supported it. You know?
I would have supported that. I don't know
Yeah.
why they didn't support it.
It was like it was in the conference committee. It got through the Senate, and it wasn't in the House. And then I can't remember it got too complicated or something,
okay.
and they just said forget it.
Because
you know?
we tried to find, especially UVM. I mean, it was just every nook and every
Yeah.
screw and nut that was over here. Nothing was ever put together.
Yeah.
It
No,
was-
people
it
should be able to shop around.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't matter to you whether you have it at Copley or Rutland, and traveling there isn't a problem,
Right. Well, then do it.
do it. Right.
That's
Yeah.
great. So let's talk a little bit about this year, because you and I saw each other up there quite a bit.
We did, yeah.
This year, what were you tracking down mostly this year? What were your big Was education something you were following, or?
Not really. I mean, we were paying attention to it because everybody was talking about
Yeah,
it. But we had a lot of budget issues trying to increase funding we wanted to increase funding for, our whole thing was about affordability. So healthcare affordability was a big priority, and we pursued that as a big issue. Making Vermont State University more affordable, and in fact, we supported the Freedom and Unity grants that if you have a household income of $75,000 or less, you would be able to go for free, tuition free. That did pass. They put 1.5 million. We wanted 5 million. That was a big thing that we pursued, but along the lines of making it affordable for our members to send their kids to school or to go to school themselves, and helping our members on the campus fill those seats. Because those campuses are economic engines for the communities they're in.
Right.
So we worked really hard on that. And we were very disappointed. We got a bill passed out of the House General Committee, 11-0, total bipartisan bill.
Why?
That it doesn't happen that much in the State House.
Yeah.
And it was a bill to extend survivor benefits to the children and families of law enforcement officers.
I saw that.
And correctional officers who die in the line of duty. And unfortunately, it got hung up in the House Appropriations Committee, and they just would not pass it out, which was really disappointing for us.
Is it dead, or can you reinvigorate it next year?
It's still alive, and we are going to reinvigorate it, and we're going to try to really engage people in the communities of the legislators who were opposed to it.
That makes sense, Steve.
Yeah, it doesn't have a huge fiscal impact. You could see appropriations saying, okay, this is going to have a huge fiscal impact, we can't do it. But in the last 50 years, there have been 29 law enforcement officers who've died in the line of duty. There have been 3 correctional officers. And what this bill would have done is the firefighters have this benefit. And what it would have, firefighters, EMTs have this benefit. This would have, and they have it at the federal level. The difference is the federal government also provides it to law enforcement and corrections, but Vermont doesn't.
Oh.
So we were trying to get some equity there.
Right.
We were very disappointed that the House Appropriations Committee didn't pass it, but we're going to work with the voters in their district.
Yeah.
I can only assume, I'm from Rutland originally, I live in Montpelier now, but in Rutland we support the police, and we support correctional officers. And if they die, serving the state of Vermont, keeping us safe, we think we should take care of their children and their families.
I so agree.
So I think we can go to those communities where we had particular opposition and get the constituents on the phones to, sometimes people can be persuaded when they get enough phone calls.
Sometimes they can. Well, plus it's something that's hard to say no publicly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's sort of a bread and butter basic stuff.
If they had had a vote, it would have passed unanimously. But they did everything they could to not have a vote.
Yeah. Sometimes I wish we had that. What do they call that when you put a referendum and it's binding?
Yeah.
We don't have that, but sometimes I wish we did.
Yeah, sometimes it could go both ways. Like that could be dangerous at the same time, but
then you'd know, that's for sure.
But at least we get to, the people. I think you have to use common sense, and it's people basically support law enforcement, and they basically support corrections.
Right.
And they know that there are going to be some bad actors in every profession.
Yep.
And the people who are the toughest, this from your work with law enforcement. The people who are the toughest on the bad actors are their fellow law enforcement officers, their fellow corrections officers, because they know what responsibility they have.
Right.
So we support law enforcement and we support corrections, and we're going to try to get them this benefit.
That's great. I wish you luck with that.
Thank you.
Keep the fingers crossed. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
You should come and talk. Every first Thursday of every month, there are 3 or 4 breakfasts with retired troopers.
Oh, I'd love to go talk to them.
And they all meet. One meets in the Wayside, one meets in Rutland, one meets in, I could get it for you.
Yeah, I'd love to come to those.
And they love it. We have keynote speakers.
Yeah, I'd love to get them fired up calling their legislators.
Yeah, and this group
yeah,
would.
Yeah, it's, and I think there's some interest in the Senate. The House has their bill. The Senate version includes mental health workers and family service workers. And the last person who died, major incident was a family service worker who was murdered.
Yeah, shot in the Barry, right?
Yeah, and we had to take some action to try to help her family.
Yep.
But we we think when people put their lives on the line and they ultimately give their life, the state should have their families back. They should know that if something happens to them,
you'll be there.
their spouse and their children will have, the state will help them.
Yeah.
So I would love to come to those breakfasts.
All right, I will get you
those
the
troopers
information.
fired up.
They do get fired up. And
Yeah.
I go because I was once a bona fide law enforcement officer.
Oh.
When I was motor vehicle commissioner,
Oh.
statute
Oh.
made me a law enforcement official
Wow.
with a badge and everything.
Wow, you could have pulled me over
I
and
could
given
have.
me a ticket.
I did that to Ron Macy one time. But that was turned into a very good joke at the end of the year. And anyway, so there's a couple of things that I thought of that I'd just like to, unless there's other things you were covering
no,
on the side of COVID. What are a lot of people still working at home, or are they back?
Mostly, a lot of people are working from home. There are classifications where you have to work. You know, it doesn't make DMV.
Right.
You have to be at the counter.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, that's tough.
corrections. You have to You have to be at the facility.
Right.
But there are a lot of people who found that they were more efficient at home.
Yeah.
And that they had a better work-life balance because the commute took so much time.
Right.
And because of the housing crisis and the child care crisis, people are living further and further away from work because it's the only place they can find affordable housing.
Right.
So if we can cut out that commute, it makes it a more attractive job. The other thing I think is really interesting is, economic services is a good example. They just called in all of the benefit processing specialists and said you have to work. They did it sort of unceremoniously in a really horrible way. And they didn't really explain why. But what a lot of people have said is this is a very stressful job. Your every client that you're dealing with is at the worst moment in their life, and often you're telling them you can't house them.
Right.
Or they've maxed out their fuel benefit and it's March and it's still cold, and you have to say there's nothing I can do to help you.
Right.
So what somebody said that, she said, I get off some of those difficult calls and I walk my dog. And it gets me what I need to go back on the phone to the next person.
Right.
So I think sometimes we forget about the trauma that state employees
Sure.
experience. They're asked to do very difficult things.
Yep.
Legislators sometimes don't understand, and maybe the governor doesn't either, that they create the laws and then our members enforce the law. And no laws, might as well not have a law if it's not going to be enforced.
Right.
So that upsets people. Even the Agency of Natural Resources, we had folks who were out in the woods doing their job, and they were getting harassed by people in the woods while doing their job. And that's kind of scary, and it creates
What
a
do you
level.
mean? Where were they? Were they in the house, in the woods, and people were?
Yeah, Fish and Game. So they work for Fish and Game, or they work for Fish and Wildlife,
see.
and they're out enforcing regulations
Right.
and or agriculture when they
Yeah,
go
right.
onto a farm and say you can't pollute the water, you can't have this runoff.
Right.
Sometimes people react in a way they shouldn't, and that creates a lot of pressure on those employees, and we forget that it's easy to pass a law, it's harder to
Right.
enforce that law, and the people you're asking to go out and enforce it, you need to support them.
Yeah.
So if letting them work from home and letting them walk their dog
If it does.
calms them down
Right.
and keeps them working, because we at one point we had over 1,000 vacancies in state government.
Whoa.
We're down a little bit recently, but we have a hiring problem as well,
Right.
just like any other employer. So we want to keep the employees we have because we don't want to. It's hard to replace them.
I just like being. I'm an office person because I've been sitting home these days and just keep eating.
Yeah. Well, some people are good. So there's they're mostly hybrid schedules where people come in on Wednesdays
Yes.
and Tuesdays and Wednesdays, but they work at home
Thursday, Friday,
other days.
right.
So it's been mostly that. Some people do better in the office.
Yep.
And others, I know we have 20 staff people at VSEA. We've been more productive, and the atmosphere, working environment has improved greatly since everybody worked from home.
Wow.
We have admin that come into the office, and people can come to the office if they want.
Good.
But people just find it much more enjoyable to work from home.
On the sort of negative side, I did 15-minute interviews with the businesses in town.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And this, I never even thought of this, but they focused on the fact that they don't have the same level of business
Yeah.
because state employees are home. And I thought, wow,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought of that. But
The counter punch to that, because I've talked to some of my friends
Yeah.
who run restaurants, is that there's a bunch of people in Montpelier who used to work in Burlington. And there's a bunch of people in Montpelier who used to live in New York. Go get them. Get them to come to your restaurant.
Yeah.
Incentivize them. They're in Montpelier.
yeah,
They're working from home when they would have commuted to another community or another state.
right.
So you have to adjust your marketing strategy.
Yeah,
you
you're
know?
right. You're right.
I think
They're there.
we have to come to terms with the fact that that COVID, that's one change that COVID brought that's probably going to be around forever.
Yeah, I think.
You know?
Yeah, because I remember that it came up when I was, I don't know what job I had. I think I was in personnel where we always thought if you can't count the widgets, you can't work home.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, but because there's a lot of job marketing. There's a lot. How do you know if you're really doing your job marketing if
Yeah.
you don't have somebody to market? I don't know. And it just has to be. I did 500.
It depends, yeah.
It's hard.
The way I look at it with my staff, because sometimes I get criticized for the decision I made to let people work from home, is I look at the results. Are they getting the results? Is the work getting done?
Right.
Is it good quality work?
Right.
And if they're doing that, I don't care what time they work. I don't care where they work. As long as if I need something,
Right.
the members need something,
Good for you.
it's done.
Yeah.
And done well.
Yeah, I'm good with it. I just eating by myself.
I do
I
think
go
there's.
out to lunch and eat with the people from work.
Yeah, I mean, I think Montpelier, I live in Montpelier now, and I think we do have to embrace the idea of more development, more housing downtown. A lot of the state office buildings could be converted to
Yes,
housing. It's
yep.
expensive to do
It
that,
is.
but the office, I'm a big proponent of buying the post office and converting it.
But that's an expensive purchase, isn't it? Because the structure itself is a little.
I'd knock it down because it looks horrible.
Oh, and just start again.
It's the land
there
that I
you go.
love.
Oh, the land, okay.
I hate
Well,
that
that
building.
makes
And if you look at the historical society and you look at what was there before that building, you think, how could they tear that house down to put this building
Oh,
in
really?
place? But I think we should tear that building down and build. We're getting off subject, but
No.
build
That's
a
important.
flood-proof, zero emission,
Yeah.
energy efficient building with
Showcase.
with parking underneath
Yeah.
and mixed use housing and a parking garage in the back, because
Nice.
God knows we need a parking garage. I
Yeah.
don't care what anybody else says, we need a parking garage.
Yeah. Remember one time there was a proposal to have the legislators park in the Department of Labor and get shuttled?
Oh yeah, that one didn't go
Yeah,
over
that
well.
that was about lasting
Yeah.
a half a minute.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what is it? Oh, I was just reading lately that there was a potential strike in Rutland and it was averted.
Yeah.
How was that?
Yeah, the teachers in
settled?
Rutland. So I give total credit to Representative Mary Howard, who went and spoke at the teachers' rally the night that the settlement came.
Oh, really?
And we call her the closer.
There you go. And
went
just to be transparent, notice the last names.
Yes,
Yes,
she's my mother.
My mom.
Yeah, so she went and spoke at the rally, and then dropped the mic, and then 2 hours later the deal was done. So I
Cool.
said, that's all it took was
All
Mary
right.
Howard to give a speech. Now the teachers worked really hard down there. They stayed unified. They were the lowest paid teachers in Rutland County, and they accepted a neutral fact finders compromise. The advice the school commissioners got was, I think, not good advice. They should have accepted the fact finders proposal, but in the end, they did come to an agreement and averted the strike. So
Good.
I personally give Mary Howard credit.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, but I think we should also give the teachers a lot of credit for their
They did.
hard work.
I was very impressed what happened on the pension with the teachers.
Yeah,
That blew me away that they really gave back.
yeah.
I've good for them. They understood how serious that was.
It's always
It wasn't a
you know
joke.
this from your time in state government, and how you approach an issue, and this is how you manage a state agency too. Of how you approach it is almost all the ball game. If you come in from on high,
Yeah, right.
do secret meetings and drop a bomb in the middle of the room,
Right.
you're going to get a certain reaction. if you work with the folks, you say, here's the problem we have to solve, and you bring in all the perspectives,
Yep.
you're more likely to get something that people have ownership over. So most of the fight on the pensions in the legislature was about the process. And we ended up saying, we want the pensions to be vibrant, we want them to survive.
Yes, please.
But we don't want to be, we don't want our members' retirements discussed without them. And we don't want any deal that comes out of a secret meeting. We want to be part of the process. And that's what ultimately ended up happening. That included the teachers and the state employees, and we got a pretty good deal.
Yes, you did. I was very impressed. I thought this was not going to
Pensions are doing well, and in 2038, we're on track to having our unfunded liability completely eliminated.
It's great.
And $300 million. A few years ago, the estimate from Beth Pierce was, on the day that our unfunded liability is gone, we'll have $300 million in revenue that we can decide what to do with.
Ooh.
We can spend it, we can give a tax cut, we can do whatever we decide to do.
Nice. Yeah, that I must say, I will admit that I didn't think the bill that was passed, it was great, but it wasn't great enough. And I thought eventually we're going to have to go back and redo it, because I was pushing for, no hitting the moderator, I was pushing for, if you're a new employee, you get X, and employees who are here get Y. And as long as you accept the job, knowing the deal, then it should be okay.
Yeah. The problem with that is that you take out a population that we need to be contributing to the fund in order to keep the fund healthy. Because people are retiring, so you need a new crop of people to come in and contribute to that fund. So if you put them in the 401k plan, and then the other thing is Vermont's overall retirement savings is one of the lowest in the country. And so,
Steve, do that again? What's the lowest?
So as a population, as a state, our Vermonters have saved the least for their retirement. So
what the heck?
Yeah, it's scary. So, what happens is if you're on the 401k plan and you run out of money, where do you go? Food stamps, you go to the SNAP program.
Right back to the state.
You go back to the state. So in many ways, the pension plan is an economic driver, because you go to the local diner, you have a little extra money, you can go spend a little money, but it also keeps you from needing to sign up for state benefits because your income is a little healthier.
Wow.
So, and almost all the money in our pension is derived from investments. So we put it, it's a really good deal. We pull a ton of money out of Wall Street and into the Vermont economy. So, the way we have to be very careful when it's not just the person who's going to suffer, it's the state economy that's going to suffer. So the way we've done it, Mike Pichek has done a great job. Beth Pierce before him. Yep. We have really good state treasurers.
Beth was great too. I gave her a lot of credit.
She's great. Yeah. She is. I used to see her. I go to the gym really early in the morning, and I'd go get my iced coffee sometimes at Dunkin' Donuts. And every once in a while, I would see the treasurer in the line at Dunkin' Donuts, either behind me or in front of me. Yeah. And I was going to the gym and starting my day, and she was leaving the office and going home at 4:30 in the morning.
Oh, ow. It's dark at 4:30.
I would buy her coffee and say, I'll pay for her coffee because I know she's going home.
Well, I liked her. She stood up when they wanted her to take out wanted her to divest with the fossil fuel and all that stuff. And she said, no, my job is to make money for the plan. And those funds make us money. Yeah. And I went, good for you, Beth.
Yeah, and her approach, the way she approaches it, in fact, I was just reading a story about a group of nuns who are making investments in corporations.
All right.
So that they can go to the shareholders meetings and demand social action.
There you go.
And that's what Beth was doing. Yep. And so with a pension our size, that's more effective. Because if you divest, someone else is going to buy that stuff.
Right, and you won't have a say. You won't have a say at the table.
Have a say.
I like that.
Was very. So I miss Beth Pierce a lot, and I wish she would come back to government.
Now, is she in the area? I don't mean to give it. I thought she was going to go back to Boston.
No, she's
good for her.
She's still here.
Yeah, she's great. She's got a really cool house in the middle of sort of this.
Oh, she does.
Yeah, I just happen.
She's a really cool person. I like her a lot.
I like Beth.
Yeah.
Anyway, so in my little notes here, I came up with two things I wanted to talk to you about. You probably saw them. One is independent contractors Where do we stand with that? That was and I'm telling you, every year we fought about independent contractors.
Yeah.
Have we ever, we even made the national news at one time with
Yeah.
this nonsense. Have we ever fixed it?
We almost did last year. We got the
You
closest
kidding?
we've ever gotten.
What a
So
waste of time.
we got a bill passed in the House and the Senate, and it ran out of time, and it got to the veto session. It was on the calendar for consideration in the Senate,
Oh,
and it on the last day of the normal session, and then in the veto session, it was still on the calendar, but we were 3 votes short.
oh, wow.
And
Could
the-
you explain to the folks viewing here what that issue is all about? And
Sure.
remains, I mean, it's been, what, 10 years?
Yeah, it's called we call it privatization. So it's an effort by governments to replace the work of state employees
Right.
with a private contractor.
Right.
And almost always, what you just described earlier is what happens. They come in, they promise the world.
Oh, right.
Then a year or two later, when nobody's
bad.
watching, all of a sudden the savings evaporates.
Right.
And your control over the level of service is really diminished. So Vermonters, a lot of people complain about the call centers that are all over the country.
Right.
Because they think they're talking to a Vermonter. The person who's at the call center, it could be in Illinois or Chicago or
Overseas.
wherever.
Yeah.
They don't have the level of expertise that state employees have. So you pour your heart out on your healthcare issue or your SNAP issue or your housing issue, and they say, well, I can't help you, but I'm going to transfer you to a state employee who can. So now you go to the state employee and you have got to do it all over again. And by this time you're irritated because you just thought you were
Right.
talking to somebody. Department of Labor, this happens a lot too. And so the state employee then has to say, okay, either they told you wrong information or here's what really has to happen. And it really, the level of service is diminished. And in the end, it doesn't always save Vermont a lot of money.
And what were you hoping to have happen in your bill?
We had a couple of things. We said the basic premise of our bill was, look, if you have an ingenious way of delivering state services that that saves a lot of money, but doesn't get you to a cheaper place by nickel and diming the employees of the private contractor. We said you had to provide the same health insurance benefits, the same retirement benefits, comparable wages. There was whistleblower protections, things like that would say, don't save money in Vermonters' name by nickel and diming your employees. If you have an ingenious way of delivering state services that doesn't involve that, okay, that can be considered, and it should at least be a 20% savings. And then we put an enforcement mechanism in that gave the state auditor power, the attorney general power, and there was a new commission to review the contracts, which doesn't happen now, and say, yeah, actually, they are still saving us money. Or they never, like we had one recent privatization contract that never reached the goal of, in the law, you're supposed to save 10% over what
Right.
the public sector
Right.
employees were costing. And this private contractor never reached that goal. And nobody did anything about it.
There you go. Well,
Yeah.
it'll be back next year, eh? That's
We'll
a
try
good
again
thing.
next year.
There
Yep.
you go.
Yep.
Okay, the other one, guess.
Oh, no.
Temporaries. Is that?
Yeah.
I got into so much trouble one time
Yeah.
because Annie and I were
Yeah.
sent to the cafeteria, and I didn't call management, and she and I
Made a deal.
agreed on something,
Yeah.
made a deal, and came back to the House GovOps with Donna,
Oh, yeah.
and we passed it. Oh
God,
my
I
God, I
miss
was
Donna.
in so much trouble.
Oh, I miss Donna
Oh,
Swain.
isn't she great? She's
Yeah,
the best.
she was the best. So temporary employees, we have what we call a temporary employees bill of rights. So people should know temporary employees, that's the title for the position. It doesn't mean that they're not working full time.
Right, right.
And we've had people working sometimes 20 or 30 years in a temporary position, which means they don't have health insurance, they don't
Yeah,
have
right,
retirement,
nothing,
they don't
right.
have a union, they don't have any paid holidays, they have no sick days.
Right.
And it's really exploitive if you drag it out that long. So what we have proposed is a Bill of Rights that allows them paid sick days, allows them holidays, paid holidays, access to health insurance. And one reason why we really want health insurance is because if they come to the office sick, they get everybody sick.
Yeah, right, for sure.
You know, so that's
Spread the wealth.
that really, one of our members said, look, the whole office is sick because these temps are coming to work sick because they don't have sick days.
Right.
So we have a sick day, a paid sick days.
Good.
We have a temporary employees bill of rights. Harder than you would imagine to pass that bill. It shouldn't be, but it is.
I mean, you would think the ones that have been there for a while, they've heard this thing.
Every year.
Like every year.
Yeah,
Right,
every
with
year.
the contractor one, it's like,
Yeah.
oh my God.
Yeah, they get overwhelmed, I think, by all the different classifications, which is easy to do
Yep.
because there's a lot.
Well, and you're right about that, because I remember one time the press called the VSEA and got a set of numbers for temporary, full-time, and then they called me, and I gave them
Different numbers.
different numbers because I was doing full-time, part-time, I mean, all this
Yeah,
other
there's a
breakdown.
lot of different-
and they
yeah.
thought one of us was
Yeah.
trying to be funny here and mislead the press, and it was just,
Yeah.
I said to them, you have to know what you're
Yeah.
asking.
I mean, there's a need for temporary employees who actually work, like when the tax department needs
right.
extra help,
Yep.
or, you know, there's seasonal employees. There's now a new definition in the law for seasonal employees at the parks.
We did that at DMV in June and July, which was our
Yeah.
busiest
Yeah.
car sales time.
Yeah, you need temporary employees for temporary projects.
Right.
But when somebody's actually working
Yeah.
in a full-time capacity
Right.
for years,
right.
that's wrong.
Yeah.
You know, that's where we think it's
Yeah,
wrong.
and then they find the person next to them is either making way more or way
Yeah.
less and doing the same
Yeah.
thing. So, okay, so it's still going on, is what you're telling me.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, I don't want anything to change in case I ever come back.
Yeah,
like,
it's hard
okay.
to.
Yeah. So, and then when I read your Facebook, you
Uh-oh.
have, no, it's good. It's a really great place for employees to look. I always
Yeah.
wanted to sneak into the employee-only section to see.
Oh,
what-
on our website,
Yeah,
yeah. You
but
can't,
anyway.
we block you.
But you co-sponsored, and I adore Miss Trouts, Katie Trouts. I adore her from Montpelier Alive.
Yes.
You know, and of course you must have known Dad, Otto Trouts.
Oh, yeah.
From
Oh, you know, I
finance?
never realized they were.
Oh, yes.
I never realized they were connected.
Yep.
Interesting.
And I gave her some pictures of Dad.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I remember
Back
Otto.
in the day. Yep.
Yeah.
But I love Montpelier Alive.
Yeah, but they came through during that flood,
They
didn't
did.
they?
And there's only there's only a couple of
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, Katie did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
I've never met her, but
Oh, she's
she
wonderful.
did a fantastic job and really filled a real need during that flood. And I'm worried that we're going to have to do it again if it doesn't stop raining every weekend.
You are. It's going to be a yearly thing because they
Yeah.
haven't done what I think people think they should do.
Yeah.
You know, they did a lot of work on gathering information and
Yeah.
letting people express their opinions and
Yeah.
stuff, but now we have to do.
We have to do, and we have to make some big changes, I think. You know, like I was talking about the post office.
Yeah.
That building isn't going to work. It's going to keep flooding. We got to build a building that's higher up. That's not going to, you know, if it
Right,
floods, it's only
right.
going to flood the garage.
kind of a-
you know.
A canal out of town or
Yeah,
something.
it's got to. We got to move
Yep.
things up, and I go to the Cape every summer, and I've noticed that if you walk, I do like these. I don't like the woods, so I don't like to hike in the woods.
Oh.
But I do urban hikes. Like I like to walk around towns and look around
Yep.
at the buildings, and I noticed in the Cape that there's a ton of construction projects where they're taking these historic homes and putting
Lifting
them
them
up
up.
higher, because the reality is
Yeah, that whole
flooding
area
is-
last year got really flooded, Wells or Gunquit.
Yeah.
Oh, it was just
Yeah,
water only. It was
yeah.
terrible.
I love to do that. Like I learn a lot doing that, and you see a lot when you're walking around.
Right.
When you're driving, you miss it.
I was just telling somebody yesterday, I was out to dinner with a friend, and I said, I can walk miles in New York City.
Yeah.
Where I can't, if I walk an hour here, I'm dead, you know, like a mile. But in New York, same thing. You're just,
Yeah.
you don't even know you're walking that far
Yeah,
because
it's the
you've got stuff
momentum
to
of
look
it.
at.
Yeah,
Stuff to
yeah.
look at.
Yeah,
That's
it's funny. I was
great.
with a friend in New York, and I kept saying to him, "You can't stop. Don't look. Just keep going.
Yeah.
Don't look down. Just keep looking and go straight."
Yeah, that's what you do, and you don't realize. And then you guys are very active in Green Up. Thank you very much.
Yep, we are.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, we encourage our members to get involved in that.
And you have, I read this whole thing, and scholarships.
Yes.
That's a great
Yeah,
thing.
69 applications for this round of scholarships.
Nice. And is
Yeah.
it high school or college or
It's
what is
high
it?
school going on to college. Yeah. Yeah, or a trade school, like,
Oh,
you know.
thank you for that.
Yeah.
I'm a big trade person.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. If I had known then what I know now, I would have tried to develop a program, a homeschool program, that would, in lieu of going to high school, where my one grandmother would have taught me how to bake, the other grandmother would have taught me how to cook, and I'd be a multi-millionaire right now.
There you go.
But instead, I went to school and
Learned about trucks.
I did a mediocre. I did not do that great in school.
That's right. That's
I
right.
made
We
it.
love you anyway.
Yeah.
You're doing a great job at the VSEA. I hear
Thank you.
that.
Thank you. I'm trying. We have really good member leaders, and they're really involved. So
What do you hope to see come, in the future for your next 10 years at VSEA?
Oh, well,
Are you going to stay in that building? You were thinking of moving, weren't you, at one point? Or
there's a big debate about it, because we use it, our members use it, and our retirees bought it. We own it. There's a lot of debate about it. I think the world is changing, and it did flood. It didn't flood as badly as the other
where did
buildings.
it flood?
We had a unique
Basement?
situation. The basement filled up. We had some water come over the front door, but the biggest problem was the water coming down the hill, and it filled our ventilation system.
Oh, my God.
All the pipes were full with water.
Dude, that's not good.
Because I looked around and thought, oh, this isn't that bad. And then all of a sudden, smash, water came down. So we had $500,000 of work that needed to be done. And we did it.
How did they get rid of, mold? Which is my
They ripped out all the sheetrock,
they?
and they started from scratch, and new flooring and all that stuff. So we're hopeful that it won't happen again. And we moved all of our electrical upstairs, and our furnace had to be replaced, and all that stuff had to be done. But and I have to say, we have such great staff, and I have two, Amy Kinsell and Sue DeVoyd, who jumped in and just took on the project of revamping the building. I never had to do anything. They did the whole thing, dealing with the insurance companies, and we had flood insurance, so we're lucky. But there's a lot of discussion about, what's the right, do we need this building? Should we keep this building? Do we need another building? Do we need a building at all? And then members
And there's no room to expand there either. It's pretty
it's
tight.
a historic building.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so you have to do it a certain way.
Yep, right.
And it's very expensive. There's not a lot of parking.
No, that's
which
true.
is a real issue.
Although we park there every time there's fireworks.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
That's a great place to park. I just try to hide so they don't know I'm still
a lot
in
of people
the
do.
VSEA parking lot. But you have a good group of people that work there.
Oh yeah, we have a
Really
great
should.
staff. We have one of the best union staffs, I think, in the country. They're really, we've got some new folks who have just started, and we've got Gary Hoadley and Gretchen and Doug and people who have been around for 20 or 30 years. So it's a good mix, and we've got a good, newer people are coming in. Some of the folks are getting close to the end of their career, and we try to share the information.
Right, well, we talk to Isla all the time.
Oh, I miss Isla.
I just had tea and crumpets with Isla the other day
I haven't
at the
seen
North
her in
Branch.
100 years.
Yeah, she looks fabulous.
Yeah, I
looks
bet.
great.
She was one of my favorites. Yeah.
Well, when you're happy, and she's happy being retired, and they
I don't see her. I used to see she and Bruce at Sarducci's all the time. I don't see them.
They do a lot of stuff, so they're always gone. Me and Bruce are here.
I see you at Sarducci's all the time.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
see Isla.
All right, so we've got 5 minutes, 4
Okay.
minutes and whatever. What would you like to wrap up the show with, to talk about what you see in the future? Any major changes for a union or your union?
So I think the biggest thing is we have an understaffed state government that has an increasing number of folks who are getting ready to retire. We need to come to terms with that. We have a shrinking workforce in Vermont. You hear the governor talk about that. So I do think politicians have to come to terms with the fact, like certain classifications, mental health, family services, corrections, law enforcement, other, some of those fields, we have big shortages. And the cost of the number of people in this labor market, which is already shrinking, who want to do that work, given the scrutiny they're under and the difficulty of the job, is few and far between. It's getting smaller. The politicians haven't come to terms with the fact that it's going to cost more. Basic economics.
Yeah.
We need to pay correctional officers more. We need to pay all state employees more and provide them better benefits in order to fill those vacancies. and to provide the services that people need. And I know a lot of people say you should run government like a business. It's not a business.
No.
There's a lot of things that you can take from the business world, but I think that staffing crisis is one thing we have to really
Where are
get
they
our
now?
arms
You've
around.
set 1,000 positions. That's like staggering. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, we're short. I think last time I heard 86 state troopers.
Whoa.
We are in a crisis situation in the Department of Corrections with correctional officers working 16-hour shifts day after day after day. Vermonters prioritize public safety, and the governor has made a big pitch for public safety. Well, the only people, you can have all the laws you want, but if you don't have law enforcement officers and correctional officers and social workers and mental health professionals and nurses, if you don't have the people doing the work, none of those laws matter.
Right.
You need to have the people.
Mental health is, I think, gotten that totally out of hand.
Yeah,
I know they're doing
yeah.
everything they can, and they're coming up with all this new ideas and stuff, but
Yeah.
I don't know what. Of course, COVID didn't
Yeah.
help. The flood didn't help. I mean, how much
Yeah.
are people supposed to put up with?
We need to change, there's a process, the judicial process needs to be faster for folks who are in our custody in the state hospital who, if they were on medication, would be fine. But because they're not on medication, they can sometimes be violent, and they wouldn't behave that way if they were healthy. You know, when somebody has a heart attack and they come into the emergency room, we don't ask whether they should get the meds. No judge comes in and says, yes, you can, you know. So if we have real mental health parity, we should have real mental health parity.
Oh, interesting.
You know, so that's a big issue that we're going to be talking about. But I think we need to come to terms with the fact that public service is a difficult thing to do,
Yes.
and we have to, just like any economist will tell you, we have to compensate it at a higher rate in order to get more people to do it.
Years ago, there was a young woman named Goldie
Oh, I remember Goldie.
with a hat and everything.
Yeah.
She appeared
She's a
before.
nurse at the old state hospital.
Yes,
Yeah.
she told some stories
Yeah.
about her physically being
Oh, yeah.
abused. That
Yeah.
I was in House Gov opposite. I could not believe
Yeah.
what she was saying, and that was
Yeah.
years ago. And
Yeah.
apparently, I'm sure things haven't gotten much better.
No, I mean, recently we had a patient who sent 24 people to the hospital. And so,
I think we'll talk about that after the filming stops. Really,
yeah,
just went.
just was not well and needed to be on medication. And, you know, I think we worked really hard to try to resolve it, and it did get resolved. But, you know, 24 people.
Because now the hospital has closed its wing.
Yeah.
There is no more place for people with mental health to stay in the
Yeah,
hospital.
yeah.
And the other hospital, the mental health was just too small, I'm sure.
It is, and you know, there was a traveling nurse at that hospital, I think in December, who was so badly injured. She had life-threatening injuries. She was in the ICU for almost a month, I think, or more than that.
Oh, my word.
So it's very difficult work, and to get people to do that, it's really important work.
Yes.
You have to value them.
It's not the people's fault. I mean, they've just
No, it's not their fault.
got an illness and they need help.
Yeah, it's not their fault. So we need to compensate them more, compensate all public employees more. The public safety components really are in serious crisis.
Yep.
And money's not the only answer. It's the first. It's the way to stop the bleeding, and then you need to reform the management culture. But
see, we've run out of time, but I have loved this interview. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
I wish you a lot of luck. You're doing a great job, and you're representing
thank you.
6,100 marvelous folks.
yeah, we should have Annie come next time, and
That would be
Annie and I will
great.
fight. We'll have a fight.
Well, I'll tell you the best story with Annie. I was with my two grandchildren. We went down the street to get a creamy in the hottest day of like the century. And so I call up, she's up at VSEA, and I'm like, get down here and bring a lot of... So here comes Nurse Annie down to help me, but the kids were loaded. And we just laughed about it because it's going above and beyond the service. So I thank you very much.
You don't find people like Annie,
No, you don't.
good people like Annie around that much
don't,
anymore. But
thank you, Steve Howard.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. See you in another week. This is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is listening beyond the sound bites. See ya.